Yes, we have the Feast of the Sacred Heart coming up, and glorious feast, kind of a consummation of all that has gone before throughout Lent. Well, actually, all that has gone before since, in a sense, since the Nativity, since Advent. I mean, we have, as though everything is directed to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. I mean, the very first beat of our Lord's heart in the womb of our Blessed Mother, all the way through his public life and his death on the cross, where it is very prominent in the account of the Gospel, St. John's Gospel, of the spear opening the side of our Lord, piercing his heart, the blood and the water flowing out of his heart, kind of the death certificate of our Lord. And we see that wound pictured on the Shroud of Turin. And on the shroud, we actually have the blood that flowed from that wound. And our Lord has given us a record of it, therefore. Not only a written record of it in St. John's Gospel, but a monument of it in the shroud. And then moving forward, of course, we come through Pentecost, we come to Corpus Christi, and we realize that in the host is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And we go immediately from finishing the octave of Corpus Christi to the Feast of the Sacred Heart to kind of, in a sense, enter into the host. That is like our goal. That is like our destination almost, liturgically. The Sacred Heart of Jesus open to receive us. A symbol of that is the sacred host as it's lying on the paten. The paten is the gold-covered, gold-plated dish where the host resides once it's consecrated during the Mass. And at one point, the priest picks up the host and he breaks it in half, puts the one half down, and breaks a corner, a particle off from the half that he's holding and puts the larger then together. And what it looks like, it looks in a sense like the Sacred Heart. I mean, our Lord's heart, in a sense, crushed by our ingratitude and faithlessness, bled white, broken. But even the part that was taken out and is now in the chalice is like the point of a spear going right to the center of the host. And that's what the priest sees when he's looking at it, like this opening going right to the center of the host from the particle that was removed, looking like the head of a spear that pierced our Lord's heart. And all around it, of course, is the blaze of gold reflecting the light, like the rays of, the sun. So, when the priest is praying his three prayers for his personal Holy Communion, he has this image before him. He's actually bowed low before it and kind of almost confronting that. When he's consecrating the host, it depends on the chalice that he has. The chalice that I'm using now is interesting because when I or any other priest using that chalice, when we bow over the chalice to consecrate the precious blood, we're looking into the chalice. We see the precious blood, and we might not see it first, but inevitably we're going to see that because of the configuration of the chalice, the precious blood in the chalice, it looks like the eye of God looking back at us. The way the reflections are and so on, you have the surface of the wine that you're consecrating, but you have kind of like an iris, like an oculus in the middle, sort of like a human eye with the iris in the middle. And the priest sees at the bottom of that, reflected on the bottom of the chalice, himself. I mean, his own face is actually, but it's reversed. It's reflected upside down. That's kind of interesting when you notice that as you're consecrating, because, it looks like your image is there in the precious blood, and that you are actually, while you're looking down into the chalice, the image of you is reversed and looking up toward God, looking up toward the crucifix within the chalice itself. Now, it's just the configuration of this chalice, but all of that seems to come together there. And I can't help but think that other priests who see the same thing from the chalices that are like the one I'm using. But what it does is it certainly focuses the attention on the reality of what you're doing, that this is the sacrificial blood. Our Lord poured his life's blood, in a sense, poured his love into that chalice, and makes it actually literally physically present there, as divine blood is present there. So in the Corpus Christi, we celebrate the presence of our Lord's body, it's true, but necessarily also his divine blood. We're celebrating the mystery of his Eucharistic presence there. When we come to the Feast of the Sacred Heart, as we are going to in just a few days, we actually enter into that host, and where we find the Sacred Heart itself. And that is the destination, actually, for all of us. That is really heaven. Our Lord wants to draw us to his own heart. He wants to draw us within his heart. It's pictured as pierced, as open, as surrounded by thorns, as a furnace of fire. And the fire is the fire of love. And as I mentioned before, these are basically the two fires we have to choose between in our lifetimes. We're going to choose the fire of hell, which is the fire of diabolical and satanic hatred, and the desire to consume us. On the one hand, and there are, sadly to say, many who choose that, but there is the fire of divine love in the heart of our Lord, which is in a sense like a gigantic furnace, but it's burning with love. We find a kind of image of that, in a sense, in the Old Testament, with the three young lads, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Remember that, King Nebuchadnezzar? And how they wouldn't worship his false gods. So he had the fire pit fanned to an enormous height of flame, and he threw them in, and all that they had, he threw them in. The book of Daniel tells us that they actually wandered there through the fire like it was a cool breeze, and they found it refreshing and delightful, like a garden, and they were singing the praises of God there. Well, the fire of God's love does not consume. Satan's hatred consumes us. But our Lord wants us to consume him. He's given himself for our consumption, to feed us, that we may have life. So if we are willing to accept the love of God and to love him in return, there's a fire waiting for us too. That fire is the fire of God's love. And it is a life-giving fire, a purifying fire, a fire that, again, is an unquenchable fire of divine love. What can we say? Everlasting life. That's where it is. So we think of our Lord's Sacred Heart as being the very emblem of that love. We have to claim the month of June for that love, for our Lord, for his Sacred Heart. What did our Lord say to St. Margaret Mary and so many others when he appeared to them? He showed her his heart, said, "Behold a heart that is so loved, that so loves mankind, and is rewarded with so much forgetfulness, negligence, and contempt." And even though the heart of Jesus is met with so much forgetfulness, negligence, and contempt on our parts, he still loves us with a great love. The greatness of his love is more powerful than any of our negligence, forgetfulness, and contempt. He still loves us with a great love, and he still wants our good. He still wants us to live.